My brother-in-law died suddenly. Now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. After that, I told my wife we couldn't put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance. For your free quote, go to SelectQuote.com. That's SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote. We shop, you save. Full details on example policies at SelectQuote.com.
You're listening to the Hot Topics podcast with Psycho 4081, lovely Lady Lamb Chop, and fabulous Thelonious Feather. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone back. We're back to another episode of Hot Topics podcast. Today is going to be a solo day. We have my coworkers out. One has been under the weather and the other one has been tied up doing some duties. So it's going to be me, Psycho 4081, on this particular episode, solo dolo. Okay. So one of the things we wanted to speak about, and I was hoping we had a discussion or people here to talk about it and give their inputs in it, was adults. Adulting sucks. Okay. For anybody out there who, enjoys being an adult, yes, we do enjoy being an adult, sometimes, but overall, I think adulting sucks. So you kids don't know how good you have it. So we're going to go over some things that every functioning, responsible adult should know. And a lot of things are common sense, but some things are not. And hopefully, if any parents are listening, they can relay this back or have their child listen to these things and hopefully get some insight on where they are in that progress or that progression, adults included. So what I did realize is that being a responsible adult is a lot to it. And there's some shortcomings that I have when it comes to that, just by going over some of the things that I was reading and compiling, for this episode. So we're going to talk about that. And it's basically everything a responsible adult should know, do, have, and accomplish, right? Simple as that. And we're going to go over some things like, again, things to know, things to do, things to have, things to accomplish, like talking about life skills, legal and civic knowledge, social and emotional intelligence, which sounds easy, but that's one of the more difficult things. We're going to talk about daily habitual practices, routine maintenance, relationships in community. We're going to talk about financial milestones, things to accomplish. We're going to talk about personal development, and that's a big one. We're going to talk about social contributions, which I think everybody should have, and that's undervalued. Some bonus character traits to cultivate. We're going to talk about key documents and records, things that you should have in your possession, and financial essentials. That's about being an adult and functioning as an adult and preparing to have your own family. We're going to talk about some practical tools and household items. Sounds easy, but these are little things that some people don't think about. And then we're going to go into knowledge and resources, home and living essentials, transportation essentials, because everybody needs transportation, and then contingency and mobility in case things happen. Okay. Some things you'll hear is going to be repeated because they're applicable to different topics. So nevertheless, don't fret. So first thing we're going to talk about is life skills. And life skills is just basically that. Those things that you have, though, that experience, that know-how, that's basic to life. right? So number one, basic financial literacy. That means you need to understand budgeting, savings, debt, credit, taxes, and interest. Now, this one's interesting because, people do know budgeting for the most part. That's basically putting in your income and your expenses and see what you have left over and making sure you allot the appropriate amount of money to those things. And then you add in other things like your wants. Always take care of your needs first. And then hopefully you'll have savings. Now, the savings part, that's self-explanatory. You want to make sure that you do have a savings especially for emergencies or just for the future. Debt is not always a bad thing, but that's something that needs to be controlled, because if you don't understand how debt works, it can work in your favor and it also can work against you. So you need to know things like that. And they have classes on financial literacy out there. And I think what we'll end up doing is every subcategory that we have, we're going to actually have a different episode to talk more in depth and bring in some experts to talk about it. So we'll have somebody to come in and talk about financial literacy that covers all of that. But for now, we're just going to talk about the general things because it's a lot. Credit. Most people don't understand credit, how your credit affects many different things. So you need to learn about credit. You need to learn, how a credit score is calculated, the impact it has. Then there's taxes. The raggedy taxes. Everybody needs to pay taxes. You're never going to get around not paying taxes. And taxes is not necessarily a bad thing. You just need to know how to file and how to, record things so you can actually get the most out of it. So, and then there's interest. That could be from investments. That could be from savings, which is not a lot, but just understand the interest. So you want to go into time management. This is probably one of the most difficult things. You need to know how to prioritize tasks. Very difficult for most, not for most, but I know for me. Set goals. Easy to set goals, but maintaining it and being on that drive or that, ladder to get to those goals is something else. And then you have to manage procrastination. That's what your time management thing is. And there's so many things in that you can talk about. Procrastination will make your day harder. You can make your financial goals more difficult. But that's something that some of us do. And I'm one of the big perpetrators of procrastination. If they had a degree in it, I would have a master's. And under life skills, you need to know about critical thinking. Now, critical thinking, there's a lot of people out here, and we always talk about this on social media. There's a lot of people out here that see information or see things that's posted. They read, hear, look at, whatever, but they don't have any critical thinking skills, or they don't use critical thinking. So you need to be able to evaluate whatever information is out there or that's presented to you. You have to think independently, and most of all, avoid being scammed. Okay, because that can cost you a lot in money. So again, we're going to have in-depth episodes to talk about all these different, points. Number 4, you need to have basic home and auto maintenance. You need to know how to do certain things like, how to reset a breaker in your home, how to change a tire, how to stop a leak, how to, change your oil. Even though you could pay for it, sometimes, knowing how to do those little basic things will save you money in the long run. And you're not always going to be in a position to do a lot of those things, but it's good to know how to do certain things. Changing the filter on your air conditioning or your furnace. I think changing light bulbs. And it sounds simple, but there's a reason you need to change a light bulb and see what, you can select the light bulb and select something that's not going to be bright enough or something that's going to take up too much of your power. So if you want to be power conscious, those are the things you got to look at. So it's not so much as easy as it seems for everything, we're not asking you to put up a drywall or anything like that, but just know some basic repair stuff, like using spackling to patch up a hole. That's easy. A lot of this stuff you can get off of YouTube, but you want to have some type of basic home and auto maintenance know-how. And then, this is big for me, emergency preparedness. When emergencies happen, and emergencies could be anything, you got to know how to call emergency service. You should know how to administer basic first aid. And that could be like having a deep cut or somebody with a broken bone or something along those lines. First aid, you want to, it's good to know some type of CPR, because that could be the difference between life and death between, a loved one. And what to do, how to respond to a fire. If you have a fire in your home, I'm not talking about where the whole house is engulfed in flames. I'm talking like if there's a kitchen fire or fire that started in one of the rooms, or maybe the kids were playing with matches, how to address those, what to do when you have storms, and but at these storms, heavy rain, and make sure that your outside gutters are clear. Make sure that the sump pump is working, because that might bring a lot of rain and you don't want backup and stuff in your basement. And then what do you do during power outages? So those are basic things that you need to know. That's, life skills. So the other part that you need to know, legal and civic knowledge. And this kind of burns me up sometimes too, when you talk to somebody and they don't know certain things. I'm not saying you have to be a lawyer, but certain things you need to know to be a functioning adult, a responsible adult. You got to know some of your rights and responsibilities. If you have a job, know some employment laws. So, they can't work you 120 hours a week and not compensate you with overtime or whatever it is. You need to know that if you're employed. If you're renting a home or an apartment, you should know what your tenant rights are, what the landlord can and cannot do. Not just that, what your rights are or your responsibilities are as a tenant. So you just can't know what their rights are or your rights are. You got to know what your responsibilities are. You need to know about legal protections, and that's when it comes out to not, knowing your rights as it pertains to law or law enforcement, or even consumer law. Can you return items, or if you buy a car, how long do you get to return it for a refund? Things like that. So I won't go too deep in it again, because there's things you need to learn in depth, and this would be like probably a 6-hour podcast episode if we went into depth with all of these. So a person would need to know how government works, how the healthcare system work, not just your local government, but you need to know how state and federal things are structured. One thing used to irritate me is when people get so bent out of shape because the state delegate didn't get the sidewalks, done, or the councilman didn't change the law or didn't bring in a business to the area. But you have to know what their responsibilities are, what their rights are, what can they do. You'll get mad at the councilman for something that is out of his control, out of his power, out of his jurisdiction. The same thing with the state delegate or state senator. That's why that's important. And then obviously once you know how that works, then you can probably be a better informed voter, or get involved with the legal process to how to change things or how to make your voice known, not just on voting day. You need to know how to vote. When you go on election day, where do you want to go? Not where you want to go, where you need to go. What things you need to bring, what things you cannot bring. Those are important things. And then health insurance. How does health insurance work? You need to know what you're allowed to claim, or what you're able to get paid by the insurance. What about deductibles? All things like that. I mean, these are pretty basic things. And then when you go under under, maybe I need some water, but you need to go into social and emotional intelligence. Now, this is the ambiguous thing, right? Because sometimes I think like, okay, having social and emotional intelligence, that's a word that a lot of people throw out, but they don't really understand it. But basically, that's going to be a whole episode in itself. But you need to know how to handle conflict resolution. And along with that, have some type of communication skills. That's super duper important. That could be the difference between you living a crazy life, having stress at home, not getting along with your neighbors, or even having issues at the job place. You need to know how that's done and how to do it effectively. And then you need to know about, this is more on the social, I guess, intelligence. But when you talk about boundaries and consent, that's both. You need to know what your boundaries are and how to express it. And you also need to know about consent, especially in the social avenue. That can get you in trouble if you don't know the difference between consent or where a normal person's boundaries are, or if somebody states what their boundaries are and you violate it. So you need to know what those are and when not to cross them. And lastly, how to recognize toxic behavior. And that's not just in other people, that's in yourself too. You will grow better as a person once you start learning what toxic behavior is, and if you have it, and if your friends have it, or your partners or whatever, it'll make a world of difference. So that wasn't too much, but there's 3 things under things you need to know: life skills, legal, civic knowledge, and then social and emotional intelligence. Easy enough, right? Not so much. Then now, what every adult needs to do, this is going to be a big one. And like I said, you're not going to know all of them, but there's things that you should know. So let's go into that one. Daily and habitual practices. What do you need to do time and time again? Number 1, pay bills on time and manage your money responsibly. Don't be impulsive with everything, knowing that if you get this $500 handbag, you're going to be short on the rent. Okay, that's something that you need to factor in. 2, maintain hygiene in a reasonably clean living environment. That's good for your mental health and is also good for your physical health. And 3, keep medical, legal, and tax documents organized and accessible. Why is that important? Because when it's time to file or time to check information, you want to be able to have that readily accessible for you to use, or to, check if you need to, if you come up with a conflict of some sort. 4, you need to take care of your physical and mental health proactively. Hear that word? Proactively. That means don't wait till you're ready to fall apart and you're on your deathbed to stop smoking. And mental health as well. This is going to be big for some people. Don't want to. They think you're weak if you go get some type of counseling or therapy. At some point, all of us need it at some point or another. And you need to take care of your mental health, because that can affect everything as well. I could tell you, I've been through that too. Now, routine maintenance. These are things that you need to have. And I'm talking about your home, your car, and yourself. You have to have know-how, and you need to be able to handle your routine maintenance. So that includes having an annual health checkup. That means, so some things, you can keep in a diary or a journal to keep up with, like say if you had headaches on this particular date, or, you was dizzy on this particular date, because that all matters. So when you finally get that doctor appointment and they'll ask you, did you have any of these? And you won't remember. So keep those things in a little book or in your phone or whatever, but you should have at least once a year an annual physical. And also teeth, believe it or not, when you have issues with your teeth, it can affect your life, actually, your well-being, and it can actually cause you your life. So you should go to the dentist at least, I'm going to say, I believe it's twice a year, to get your checkups, cleaning if needed. They'll tell you. And I think most people who have insurance, when you have a regular dentist, they'll usually, after you have your service, they'll schedule for your next one. So you want to make sure you keep on that. Car maintenance is important. It's important because that it can cost you more money, and it can also cost you your safety if you don't, keep up with that. So that means regular oil changes, tire rotations, getting your fluids checked, things like that. And if you have any lights on your dashboard that's blinking, check engine, check this or whatever, or lights out, that's important. One, you don't want to be pulled over by the police. Secondly, you don't want to get to a situation where, you really need it. Example, you had that headlight out. You had one light out, but the other one worked, so you kept on going. And all of a sudden, you're on this trip and the other light goes out. What are you going to do? You're not going to be able to drive at night with any headlights on. The police won't let you, and that's a safety hazard. So keep up with your car maintenance. Now, for home maintenance, it might be a little bit more complicated because you got to make sure that you check your smoke detectors, your carbon dioxide detectors, check your sump pump to make sure that's working. You want to check your gutters because that can keep it from flooding. Make sure it's not clogged with leaves and stuff like that. And you want to make sure you change your filters, whatever filters. It could be a portable air conditioning. It could be the furnace filter. It could be cleaning the vents from your air conditioning and heating. You want to make sure that's good. Could be changing batteries in the door locks. Things like that. So then lastly, for things that every responsible adult should do, relationships and community. And this is something that I'm not really good at. So that's my little shortcoming too. Check in with friends and family periodically. Now, it makes a difference because you never know what somebody's going through. And, you checking in on somebody might make the difference between life and death. Okay, we're back. I had to take a little break here for family business, but yeah, so getting back into relationships and communities, I said checking with friends and family periodically. You never know what impact you'll have on their day, and you always want to check on them just to make sure they're okay. So as hard as that might be for some people, try to do it. Next, know your neighbors. Participate in local community events like community meetings if you can. And the importance of that is once you attend these community meetings, there's a lot of information that's put out there. You know what's going on in the community, things that'll affect you, whether it be, something that's moving to your area, some issues that they have with construction or, the water pipes, whatever it is. They usually have guest speakers come in and talk about certain things. And that's how you stay informed, which is very important. Very, very important. They might have community events that's coming up that you might want to, make some money off of or participate in some sort of way. But it's very, very important that you have some type of community involvement. And knowing your neighbors also is a good way of protecting your home as well, because they'll notice things about you and you notice things about them, and you can call them when things just don't seem right. Thirdly, help others when you're able and ask for help when needed. That's huge. Neighbors help neighbors. Friends help friends. Family help family. That's what you have in a community. So don't be hesitant to ask for help. I know some of us, myself included, we don't like to ask for help but you ask for help, they'll ask for help, and you can build a good relationship with that, because everybody needs help at one point or another. Nobody does it on their own. And we're going to go into things to accomplish. This is a big one, because everybody has something they want to accomplish in life, but these are basic things as a responsible adult. So one, financial milestones. You have to have some type of financial milestone. And that means build and maintain an emergency fund. It might be difficult. It's always been difficult for me, but build and maintain an emergency fund. And basically you want to keep 3 to 6 months of expenses if you can. What that means is, if something was to happen, loss of job, layoff, pandemic, you want to be able to at least maintain your household or yourself for at least 3 to 6 months, and hopefully, things will resolve itself by then. Number 2, be able to file your own taxes, or if you don't know how to do that, know where to get help. And that's Tax Act. You can do it on your software, H&R Block, whatever. Then there's plenty of tax preparers all over the place. So be able to file your own taxes, and then know where to get help. 3, pay off high interest debt. That is a huge financial milestone. If you could do that, you'll be sitting pretty. You'll be able to afford more. Those little things that you could trying to save up for, it seems to be more possible now. And nothing drags you down than having some high interest debt. So have that. Accomplish one of those. Save for retirement. So that means if you're in a job, if you have an opportunity, get a 401k or put money into the 401k or IRA or something along those lines. You should always have something for retirement. Don't think for today, think for tomorrow. Maintain good credit. That will save you money in the end and allow you to get the things that you may not be able to get. Credit is a lot. I mean, we don't put enough into credit, especially when you're young. We need to teach kids about credit early. And again, we'll have something specifically on credit, because that's very important. And going into personal development. Now, everything might not apply to you, but most of them should. Number 1 would be live independently. That means financially and practically. Get out your mom's basement. Mom's okay. Unless you're there to help mom out, get out on your own. Don't always look for a roommate. Be out on your own. Know how to handle things on your own, because one day, whether you've never experienced it before, you may be out on your own, and you don't want to be lost in the sauce. Learn a second language. This is personal development. You don't have to, but it's good to learn a second language. Even if you're not going to be fluent in it, learn a little bit of everything if you can. Learn a technical skill or trade. Electricians, a little bit of carpentry. They have classes. Sometimes they used to do things at the Home Depot. I'm not sure if they do it now, but they used to have classes on how to do certain things like tiling or drywalling or something along those lines. But learn a trade. That always adds value to yourself. And then you think about things like The Walking Dead. If you had to take 10 people with you, you can only save 10 people. Who are you going to take? I'm going to take the person who know how to, build something, or, hook a electrical circuit up, or plumbing, something along those lines. You got to have some type of skill, and that's just good to have, even if it's not for that, TV type reason, but just to make your life a little bit easier. This is something that's underrated, guys, especially be able to cook. When I say cook, I mean, not just put something in the microwave, like one of them frozen dinners and stuff like that. Know how to cook, know how to actually plan and put together a basic healthy meal from scratch. Know how to make a salad. Know about nutrition. What makes things healthy? And there's a certain group of people, a certain demographic that, we don't eat healthy from the time we're young. So learn to make a healthy meal. You don't have to, I'm not saying you have to be a chef, but just learn how to put, and I told my nephews this back when they were little. So I was, back when I was dating, I said, hey, when you guys get up to dating, you can't keep always going out, taking a woman out and, going to the movies and dinner and this and that, because it'll drain your pockets, blah, blah, blah. So, I told them, said, we put together a meal. So you can get you a roast chicken. And now make it really easy, because you can go to Costco and get through one of those, rotisserie chickens, which are great for like $4. Nice size. Get you a bag of potatoes, make some mashed potatoes from scratch, some string beans or asparagus, whatever it is. Put it together. Nice, balanced, healthy meal. And it's going to, be easy on your pockets, and it's not going to, send you to the doctor. So that's very important. Travel alone once in your life. And I'm not talking about doing the risky stuff, like say you going overseas or you going to a certain place and something happens, there's nobody to check up on you. That's something I'm not for. But when I say travel alone, if that means is go to the supermarket, go to a movie, things like that, or if you're, again, talking to those people that's still living with mom and dad or grandma, you got to live away from home. You got to know how to understand the world and yourself. That's important. Get out of your own neighborhood. I learned that when I got to this particular city, and I realized it's people that has never not moved out of that city, not traveled out of the city. They have not ventured outside their own neighborhood. Get out, see how other people are doing it. See how other people are living. Expand your horizons. That is so undervalued. And a lot of us have been, fortunate enough to serve in the military or whatever, that took us to different places and we traveled. So we got to see those things. We got to see and meet people that did things differently, give us a different perspective, let us learn to compare and, use the best practices. So that is very undervalued. Get out of your neighborhood. Now, social contributions. These are some things you want to accomplish that I recommend. Volunteer at least once in your adult life. Give back. Even if it's a clothing drive, they sometimes have the hat and glove drive, coat drive, food drive, anything along those lines. You will feel better about yourself, and it's always good to give back, because you never know when you might need that same helping hand. One time in your life, volunteer at the senior center, something. Give of yourself. Vote. And I'm talking about, and this is something, vote. If you don't vote, you don't have the opportunity to voice what you want. If you don't vote, you can't complain. And I'm talking about voting in local elections, state elections, federal elections, including the midterms. Now, this is where you guys really mess up, because I'm saying I always vote. We will vote in the federal elections, like the presidential election, because we might be passionate about that. And then come midterm elections, which is the next 2 years, we don't vote, we don't turn out. And then the person that we wanted to win in the federal elections is handicapped because we didn't vote for the appropriate congressman or governor or what have you. Those things matter. You can't just vote in one election and think that's all you need to do. No, you got to vote in all of them, and make a conscious vote. Don't just vote because somebody, laughs the wrong way, or somebody wears a pantsuit, or somebody, don't have a good haircut. Be knowledgeable about certain things. When you're talking about volunteer, attend some community meetings or civic meetings, or even political rallies. Hear what they got to say. See what type of people are going to these rallies. So you want to do that. It is going to make you a better person and a more educated voter. Mentor or support someone else, especially when it comes to the kids. Some generations just drop the ball and we just, left the kids out there to fend for themselves. If you have the ability, if you have the time, go ahead and mentor somebody. It could be even a coworker or a younger person. They calling you Unc, you're qualified. Or they calling you OG, you're qualified. Mentor somebody. Pass on some of that knowledge that you had to them. You'll appreciate it because that knowledge won't disappear. You pass that knowledge on to them. Guess what? When you get older and you want decent people around you, you can feel satisfied that you pass that information, that knowledge from you to somebody else, and they hopefully would pass it on to somebody else. And it don't even have to be generation to generation. It could be peer to peer. Accomplishments again. Here's some character traits to cultivate. These are accomplishments, and these are probably one of the harder things to do because one, we have to recognize it in ourselves. Own up to your mistakes and learn from them. That's called accountability. One of the things that I'm a Marvel fan. One of the things that we always hear is that how Tony Stark's always learned from his mistakes. And if you follow the what's it called, the one with the gauntlet, whatever it's called. But anyway, the war, the Infinity Wars, right? Anytime he's defeated, he always learns from his mistakes, always, and rectifies them. So try to do that, but you have to recognize your mistakes. You have to, swallow your pride and say, you know what, I messed up. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. I thought this wrong. I jumped the gun on that. Let me rethink, retool, and, be a better person. Discipline. You got to stick to habits and commitments, even when it's hard. Hard. It's very hard. That means, I'm going to give you a personal one, sugar. If I say, you know what, I'm going to cut back my sugar, I'm going to cut it almost down to almost nothing because you can't just completely cut it out because everything in this USA has sugar in it. So you need to have that discipline. You'll feel better once you see the results, that your desired results, you'll feel better. And if you don't have discipline, you always will have that little thing in the back of your head that makes you feel bad. So those are things that you want to kind of build. People appreciate it as well. Empathy. That's the third one. Empathy. Try to understand other people's experiences. Put yourself in their shoes. Nothing worse that I hate when somebody does not have any empathy for other people. That really irks me. If you don't, I don't think you're a good person. Period. That's what I think we have in this world, not just in this country, in this world. We have a serious lack of empathy. Just now I'm looking at stuff. I follow the news, not on all the major ones, but I just follow news. And I'm looking at all these things that's going on in Palestine, in Gaza. And to see the stuff that's going on over there and you have no type of empathy, there's something wrong with you. You are morally deficient. And it doesn't even have to be something as big as that. It could be something like, what's going on with the, local police and the community relations, or, a homeless person. Have some type of empathy. You don't have to say, come out your pocket for everything, but don't be that one who says, he or she asks for $1 or 50 cents or whatever, you yell at him, go get a job and all that other type of stuff. Don't be a butthole. Yes, I said it, butthole. I know Lamb Chopper is going to say, oh, you can't say that. But yeah, you're a butthole if you say stuff like that. So, I'm gonna end it here for this episode because this is a pretty deep one, and I want to go into more things. But if you guys have kids or other adults that that can benefit from what we're saying here, and we're meaning me today, send them the share the link, send them to the podcast episode. I'm reading these things and I research these things, and I always thought I was a responsible adult, and when I went through the whole list of things and throwing some extra things at the last minute, I was like, you know what? I'm really not passing this class, this adulting 101 class. There's a lot of things that I need to improve on, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm going to recognize what I need to improve on, and then I'm going to learn from them. Accountability. I'm not putting it on anybody else. I know that there's things that we don't do that we should do, or even teach the next generation of how to do it. So with that said, the next episode, we're going to talk about things to have. That's not going to be, too long, but we're going to talk about things to have and things, I guess that's it. Things to have. Okay. I guess it is a long one. And that includes documents and records, the financial essentials. That's big. Practical tools and household items, knowledge and resources, knowing how to get resources, home and living essentials. This is the second part, is going to be the fun part, but you're going to recognize some things that you already do, and you're going to recognize some things that you should be doing that you don't. And hopefully we'll all learn from this and then pass it on to somebody else. But stay tuned for part 2 of this, and hopefully you got something out of it like I did. And like I said, please share. We have a lot of adulting to do, and I'm recognizing I'm falling short. So hopefully, somebody else can learn from this as well. So thank you for all tuning in.
Thank you, family, for listening to the latest episode of Hot Topics. As usual, listen, like, share, subscribe. Ta!